Welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm Raymond Bakari. It's been a little over a month since Congressman Cicilline announced that he is stepping down from Congress on June 1st to become the Rhode Island Foundation's next president. A special election is set for later on this year, and several candidates have already thrown their hats into the race. One of those candidates is State Senator Sandra Cano, who represents Senate District 8, which is located in Pawtucket. Senator, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Raymond, for having me today. And I really appreciate you taking the time to really inform the community about the candidacy of CD1.
Absolutely, and thank you for giving me your time for this. It's a pleasure to have you on. Why do you want to represent Rhode Island in Congress?
Do you know, Raymond, that's a very good question. And the reason why I want to represent Rhode Island is because I love to help people. That has been a, lifelong dream for me to be able to represent the Rhode Island community in Congress. And it started when I took a leadership program in 2010. It's called the Latina Leadership Institute, which the mission of that program was to engage Latinas in the civic process and also to make sure that we have representation at different levels. And when that happened, it opened my eyes of how impactful it is to be a legislator. And then so I started my public service career as a school committee member in 2012 for Pawtucket. And I was very fortunate to have the support of the community, being the first Latina ever elected in the city, representing the whole community, but also being able to be the first one, like give me a lot of responsibility to make sure that I was effective and listen to the constituency. And they were the ones that encouraged me to run for city council in 2014. I did 2 terms in the city council, and when I was finishing, or in the middle of my second term, the senator from my district resigned. And I was able to be elected to the state senate in a special election in 2018. And ever since then, I've been very fortunate to represent the city of Pawtucket residents, but also Rhode Island as a whole. I've been living in CD1 all of this time. And I think that I have the values, the democratic values and life experiences to make sure that I continue advocating and having the voice of the residents of Congressional District 1. So just all of that experience have prepared me to be able to be that voice and that representative.
In Congress, things are a bit more nationalized, but Congress people often have their own sets of priorities that they plan to address while in DC. Some are even more specific to their own states and districts. If elected, what are some of the top issues you plan to focus on?
You know, ever since I got elected, I've been having very much the voice of what the community want me to advocate for. I think the elected official should be able to represent the people, but what they care for. And one thing that Congressional District 1 residents care for is education. So that is a big, huge part of my platform. I've been doing it as a state legislator, and I will continue to be the voice of education at the national level. I think that we have a lot of things to do. Like, for example, we've been able to find some accomplishment here in the state. I'm the chair of the Education Committee in the Senate. We were able to pass a package of legislation to make sure that every family have the opportunity to have their children into 3 and 4 year old pre-K, universal pre-K in the state by a targeted timeline of 2028. So we are almost on the way there. And I think that funding at a national level for universal pre-K needs to happen. And I try to bring those resources to the state if elected. That's really one of my priorities. And with that also, with that education component, the child care system that nationwide had been in crisis, I think that we need to continue to advocate for funding and affordable, high quality education since the early age, and also taking care of the staff members, the early educators, the teachers that really take care of our children, which are definitely our future. So that is one of my priorities. Then another priority is make sure that we continue protecting our environment. I have 2 young children, and I do believe that if we don't take care of our planet right now, their future really is not secure. And we need to do everything possible to protect and then continue with policies that do everything to save our planet. And as a legislator, I have been able to stand up with advocates, and I was one of the lead co-sponsors of the Act on Climate. So I've been able to do things at the state level, and I want to make sure that I bring that experience at the national level. And then we have, a strong advocate there. Last but not least, I think quality of life issues for our residents are super important, and including one topic that I am really concerned about, which is making sure we continue to advocate as a woman and as a legislator for the right to choose for a woman. I also was fortunate to be one of the sponsors and the advocates. I stood with advocates here in Rhode Island in 2019 when we codified the Privacy Act, and I want to make sure that I continue to do that at the national level, especially because right now, under Republican control, we see that we need to really do a lot of protection, and we are in danger, right, of losing those rights. It is unbelievable to hear the stories of what's happening in some other states, and I just think that a strong voice and a voice of a mom and a woman and an advocate is really ready to fight for the right of the woman to choose. With that, I want to make sure that that working families are always in my mind. So making sure that every family in Rhode Island have the opportunity for economic growth, and to make sure that they have food in the table, that they're able to have a stability in the state of Rhode Island. And there is a lot of policies that encompass them to that quality of life, and I am ready to continue the work and advocating for them at the national level.
Speaking of the economic stability priority that you mentioned towards the end there, you did also mention in your announcement statement that you want to ensure that workers have a family sustaining wage. Currently, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. Some states have their own set minimum wage, but federally, the minimum the state would have to have it is $7.25. Is there a specific number you believe it should be raised to?
So I think right now, at least at the national level, which should be at $15 an hour, just like the target that we are looking here in Rhode Island. Obviously, we've been seeing that the effects of the pandemic are real. And then so we see inflation and interest rates coming up. So that is a number that I think that I feel comfortable with, but also I will do more research to see what would be the best scale and where we need to be for a good earning wage for our families. So at least $15 an hour is what I advocate, because we do know it works, and we know that some states are already there. Like I know there was a referendum in Florida. I was like there, and even though there was very much, it's a state that is considered to be red, like through a referendum and through the voting and democracy, they voted for a $15 an hour, which I think that is a message that we need to continue bringing at the national level, so everyone in this nation have the opportunity to have a earning wage that is sustainable and that they could take care of their families.
And I'm assuming you probably heard this when it was getting raised at the state level, but if you're elected, you'll be elected where there's a Republican-led House right now. You may hear from your Republican counterparts, they'll say that if you raise the minimum wage, it might result in raising of prices of goods, or that it could hurt small businesses. If you were to hear those points from your counterparts, how would you respond?
So this is what I would say. Most of the small businesses are already at the level that we need to be. They know that to be able to have competitive stuff, they're already paying good wages. And so it is a lot of misconceptions out there. And because of what I just mentioned to you, the inflation is real. So we are already paying high cost of goods right now. So I think that is something for people to consider, that small businesses, and I work with a lot of the small businesses, are very clear, and they're very conscious and have been joining some of these efforts, because they do need qualified staff people that in order for them to be successful in their business, and they're already most of them, they're already paying that $15 an hour wage, if no more.
Alongside ensuring that the wages are sustainable, in your announcement, you also mentioned the need to protect workers' rights and ensure better benefits and safer workplaces. Are there any specific ideas you have in mind of how that could be implemented at the federal level?
So listen, I have done that at the state level. I've been advocating for workers, and one of the pieces of legislation that I'm very proud of, I work with the members of the ACIU to protect security guards and janitors that weren't getting fair wages with the state contracts. And then so we do need to continue that type of advocacy. So every employee in Rhode Island and in the United States feel that they're being paid fairly and with high quality conditions at work. So I think that that experience could be transferred to a national level. I have done that, been there, and stand up with workers. But one thing that I think is important to also name is that for workers to be able to have a voice, they should have the opportunity to organize. So I am very in favor of workers to be able to become unions and organize themselves to advocate for what is needed for them to have, a good standard of living, high quality of life, because they are giving services to our state and our nation, and then so we need to take care of them. So.
In that announcement statement, you also mentioned, and this is a policy goal that's popular amongst those in your party, ensuring healthcare is accessible and affordable for everyone. There's multiple ways that could be approached. One of the most common ways we're hearing amongst Democrats is pushing for Medicare for all. Is that something you could see yourself supporting?
Absolutely. I would support the policy for Medicare for all. But before we do this, I'm going to just make sure that people do know that right now we are in a state and where we need to protect the policy that was passed in 2008 with the Affordable Care Act. Right now we are in risk of these policies to become voided by the Republican leadership. So that being said, so before we talked about spending, we need to do everything that we can, and then just be very conscious that whoever gets elected, and I hope that the opportunity that I have to convince people that I will be a strong advocate for them. That person needs to get there with fight and ready to advocate for that to continue to be a protection of the Affordable Care Act. Because before we spend, we need to protect. We need to make sure that we continue to having that benefit. So healthcare is a right. I've seen it here in the state how at the local level, I was able to pass legislation with a coalition of members to make sure that every kid, every children in Rhode Island have access to health care, because it is important, especially when we see the effects of the pandemic, and we need to invest in making sure that every person have the opportunity to have health care, and that is a right. So that being said, since I have experience here, I want to transfer and then continue with that passion at the federal level.
The party is also prioritizing ensuring reproductive health care is protected. You touched upon that in the very first question when I asked, or no, the second question when I asked what your priorities will be. So, would you favor a national bill to codify Roe v. Wade?
Absolutely, that would be one of the priorities for sure. I'll be happy to co-sponsor that.
I have a couple of oh, actually, before that, before we go into lightning round, you also mentioned the need in that announcement for the federal ban on assault weapons. This is a widely debated topic on both the state and the federal level, where that debate's currently happening in Rhode Island, and it's also happening on the federal level. How would you try and persuade, since it's a Republican-led House, how would you try to persuade those members of Congress to reach across the aisle and get something done in that regard?
That is a good question, Raymond. I think that I have been a legislator that understands that it's important to bring common sense and agreements between our colleagues. So while we sometimes don't agree on policy, we need to be respectful and make sure that we tell the story of why it's important. So at least to bring an awareness. So I will never be shy of speaking up for what I believe is right. And then so in my democratic values, I do believe that it's time for us to ban assault weapons. Just like I started to do here in the state of Rhode Island. Like if you look at my track record, I'm not going to divide myself from that. I'm going to continue to be a strong advocate for gun safety. And like, listen, let's just talk about what happened yesterday, Raymond. As a mom, as a legislator, I'm heartbroken that we continuously see that schools are no place where children feel safe, and then teachers and staff members like feel threatened as well. Like there is a lot of mass shootings that are happening, and that is because there is access to these weapons. And then to be honest with you, obviously it's a combination of other things like mental health issues, and I'm being an advocate of like more investment for mental health. But it is clear in the facts that we need to act now, and parents and students should not live the consequences of another shooting. Like, we need to act like today. It was very difficult for me this morning to take my own child to school. And I know that many moms feel like I do. The anxiety is real, and what is happening is not okay. And it's become a norm. And then so if as a legislator, I'm not able to be the voice of those moms and those constituents that want a ban, then I'm not doing a good job. So that's why the example that I have by standing here for my beliefs and of banning assault weapons, I want to bring that passion, that level, and those stories that have touched me to the national level, just to make sure that we could be, effective in advocating for what it needs to be done. So every child and every parent and every teacher and every constituent that we do have feel safe in the place that they live, they work, and they go to school too.
Sometimes you'll often hear from those who are pro Second Amendment. They'll say that it's entrenching on their right to have a firearm. How would you respond to those arguments?
Listen, I have those conversations with some of my constituents, and it's hard conversations because they do believe that there is a right. And I often say, listen, this is a twofold solution. Not only we need to ban some assault against, like, for me, like there is no way that a innocent child and a teacher in the school could defend themselves with someone have access to an AR-15 and then just go and enter the safe space. There is no way that I could in a way like normalize that thought, right? I cannot normalize those situations that have been happening way too often. But at the same time, like I said, I'm able to identify that with the access to firearms, like they are so easy in some states, there's also lack of access to services of mental health, like I mentioned before. So I'm able to communicate that, and like, listen, I hear the passion for the people that say that you're not respecting the Second Amendment. But for me, I think that we need to do something because right now it's coming out of hand. And then so I will make sure that they know where I come from, even if they disagree with my stand on policy. That I always been accessible, and I will pledge to always be accessible to listen to everyone, because that is my job as a elected official.
I just have a couple of lightning round style questions. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that part of the format of the show, but these are the shorter form ones, like in favor, opposed, for, or against. Are you for or against statehood for Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico?
I am I am the supporter of both.
Would you support or oppose banning members of Congress from trading stocks?
I'm against that. I don't think, yeah,
So you would favor banning them from trading stocks?
that's correct.
Got it. Are you for or against term limits for members of Congress?
So that one, I do feel that every 2 years, members of Congress have the opportunity to put their names in the ballot, and it's up to the people to choose them or not.
So you'd be against term limits?
Yeah.
Got it. And this one's more on the non-political side. Who would you say, well, kind of political, who would you say is your political role model? And it could be past or present.
Ooh, that's a good question. And I do believe that I always have admiration, ever since I got very inspired by the Obamas. But I'm going to speak not so much about a political figure, but the woman, which was the first lady, which is the one that I love, her passion, her demeanor, her elegance. That's Michelle Obama. I been very much following her since she became first lady, and her compassion and way of like looking at policy and making sure I putting people over politics is really what have got me inspired. And then I strive to be like she is, because I do know that she's doing things because she cares, she loves to help, and she's very intentional. And then so those are things that I strive to do. And so Michelle Obama is my hero. It's just my hero as I continue to be one that follows her and I admire her and her leadership role.
When you had announced your candidacy going away from the lightning round now, and you talked about it in one of the earlier answers, you emphasized that you are from the district, and you also put that in your press release. Right away, people took note of that and assumed that you were referencing how the lieutenant governor, Sabina Matos, currently lives in CD2, but could still run for CD1 because technically you're not required to live in it. So in your opinion, is it non-negotiable that whoever runs for the seat lives in the district?
So Raymond, I want to just clarify, like when I put in my press release that I do live in the district, it's because I do take pride of being part of CD1. My elected office role has been in CD1. I know the constituents here. I listen to them. I am accessible to them, and I hope that I continue to represent them, right? So that was not intent at all of like going against one or the other. Like, you know, there was some big names that were coming out and that were trying to be candidates. And then so while we look at CD1, for me, it's important that the people that are represented of my district, that live in the district, knows the district, and are able to connect with the issues of the district. And I think that I'm positioning myself to do that. I've been able to be representing CD1 for the last 12 years in different roles. And I do feel that the life experiences that I do have, I share with the constituency of CD1. And that's why I am very proud of it. I'm proud of the place that have gave me and my family the opportunity of to stay home as an immigrant coming from Colombia. And that's why I am always eager to give back and with the passion of doing it, because I love public service, I love helping people, and I love advocating for policies that really make our working families live and be in a better place.
What does it bother you if there are candidates from CD2 running for CD1 as a CD1 resident yourself?
I think that every person that decides to run should do it. It's admirable to run for office. I'll tell you, it's not easy. I've been there, done that. And then so I will never disencourage anyone for running for office. But what I do know is that I know I can bring the passion and energy from someone that has lived and knows CD1 for a long time. So for me, it is important that I live here, that I represent and what I can do here, but I will never discourage anyone from running.
My final question is also on the non-political side, similar to the role model question. I like to ask everyone this at the end to keep the tradition. In your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
It's been known by the people of like the diversity, and I tell you this because when I do go at national conferences now, Rhode Island is very well recognized because we do have a lot of diversity in our elected body. I go to different conference that are from the elected official roles, and then just to learn and then just to see what policy and how you can be affected as a legislator. And they always say, wow, Rhode Island is a small place, but a mighty place where, like, you know, people are really very proud of the representation at the local and the statewide level. And that's something to celebrate. So I would say specifically, like, our state is a melting pot, but every ingredient of that melting pot is what makes us unique. And people are noticing that at the state level, at the national level. So I want to make sure that you know the best assets of Rhode Island is the people.
I agree with you 100% on that answer, Senator. And that's all the questions I had for this interview. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure of mine to have you on.
Hey, Raymond, thank you so much for everything you do. And I really admire you know, the position that you had in terms of communicating to all the people about where candidates are. Well, inform them about policies, inform them. I follow you on Twitter, and I really love that you are always on the news, and then you always informing everyone. And I really appreciate that someone like you that is young, is still in college, are like really, really active in the role of informing people, because sometimes education is really what we need to make sure that we bring awareness of what is really happening. So thank you for what you do. Continue to bring the voice of your guests to your following, and I just want to make sure that you know that in Rhode Island we should be very proud of having students and people like you in our public education system. Like, so Rhode Island College is lucky to have you.
Thank you, Senator. That means a lot. And thank you for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. I'm Raymond Bakari, and I'll see you next time.